Welcome to the Carson Career Summer Series. My name is Amy Tejeda Lund, and I am the Industry Connections Coordinator at the Carson College of Business. And I'll be helping facilitate today's webinar, Sales in 2020, Stepping into the Next Big Trend with Outreach. As our attendants log in, we'd like to remind our participants some helpful ground rules. Please make sure that your microphone is muted upon entry to prevent echoes in the presentation. Please consider turning on your video so the presenters can see your faces. Q&A will be at the end, but feel free to raise your hand or type in any questions in the chat. WSU students, please make sure to complete the survey at the end of the session. This will be in your chat as well. We'd also like to note that the session is being recorded. Thanks to all of our participants for joining. And now, we'd like to extend a warm welcome to our presenters as they introduce themselves.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? My name is Ken Amar. I'm a senior SDR manager here at Outreach. I'm also a UW alum, so please bear with me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Shapiro, and I'm a team lead here at Outreach and also a UW alum. So go Dogs.
And my name is Nikki Davis. I'm a sales development representative or an SDR, and I'm actually a WSU alum. So the right thing to say right now is go Cougs.
Awesome. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us. I'm going to start sharing my screen and we can get started. All right. So today we're going to talk about getting into tech, even if you're not technical, right? As a quick agenda, we'll talk about a couple different bullet points. First off, we'll kick off with, who is Outreach? What is Outreach? What do y'all do, etc. And then an SDR career path, what an SDR does, etc. The impact of COVID, working remote nowadays. And then we'll also share some tips on how to interview, how to pick a company, how to land the interview in the first place. And we'll share some time at the end for any questions y'all might have. All right, first on, who is Outreach? Has anyone heard of us? Raise your hand if you have. If not, totally fine. I'm not seeing a lot of hands raised, so we can kick off. So Outreach.io, we're a late stage startup. We have about 600, 700 employees. We're based in Seattle, right in Elliott Bay, right next to the Space Needle. Our office is actually right in the water, amazing view of Elliott Bay. And a couple of weeks ago, we raised $200 million. We're worth about $4.4 billion, right? We plan to IPO in the next couple of years. So we're a really late stage tech startup, really a tech company. We're growing to about 1,000 people by the end of this year. So we're really what you can call or classify as a unicorn, right? We're worth way more than $1 billion and we're growing really, really rapidly. Awesome. And essentially what Outreach is, what we do, we sell sales software to salespeople. So it's really meta because our own sales team uses our sales software to sell to other salespeople, right? If you're at all familiar with companies like DocuSign, like Smartsheet, AWS, some of the biggest companies in the world, right? Their sales team, they all utilize Outreach to help them sell better, help them sell faster, help them sell more persistently, right? So essentially, we help salespeople sell more. Our origins were really interesting, right? So in 2010, right after the big crash in 2008, our co-founders, Manny and our other 4 co-founders, had an idea for an ATS, so an applicant tracking system, right? A recruiting software, essentially. They got some money, some seed funding, about like $1 million, 1.2 million. They developed this app in one of our co-founders' garage basement in Fremont, right? It's a 4-man shop, right? They're working 24/7 in this small ass garage, right? 24/7 coding. And if you don't know anything about the recruiting software space, it's really, really freaking competitive, right? There's tons of solutions out there. There's a lot of big enterprise players. It's really hard to get a hold of prospects in this space, right? And they had this like decent solution. You know, they're trying to call these CEOs, these VPs of HR to sell them their ATS solution, right? And they're not picking up. No one's answering, emails, no one picking up the phone. And so Manny came up with this idea. Manny Medina, our CEO, was like, hey, we need to develop some kind of solution to get a hold of these prospects, because frankly, it's impossible. And this was back in 2010, right? So they came up with what we would originally call now a sequence, right? A series of sales touch points separated over time, right? And they dropped these prospects into like this, almost like bot, right? It would phone call day 1, email day 2, LinkedIn task day 3, and so on, right? Just to get a hold of them, to sell them their ATS. And they get to these meetings, right? Manny Medina, our CEO, is our first SDR, first sales guy, right? He's presenting their ATS to this couple of companies, and they're all like, hey, your ATS is all right. What we're really interested in is how you got a hold of us. Are you selling that product, right? And so like any great entrepreneur, our CEO and our executive team pivoted, right? They're running out of funding and they realized, hey, there's a ton of market share possible in selling outreach sequences, right? So we're born out of necessity and survival. We exist within, the sales tech landscape, right? There's a bunch of different, solutions, a bunch of different platforms, but really you can boil it down to a couple of key things, right? The basis for any sales tech landscape is a CRM, customer relationship management tool. It's really just a data repository, right? It stores a bunch of information, stores records, contacts, phone numbers, just really any interaction you have with a prospect or a customer. This database, Salesforce, for example, stores all of that, right? Now, if you're a sales rep, you live in this database, you got to make phone calls. So you need a dialing solution, right? We use VoIP, so dialing over the internet, and then you need like LinkedIn, right? Any kind of social touch point solution, inbox like Gmail, Outlook, etc. And so there's a bunch of different tools in this landscape. And what our product does is it combines all of them seamlessly into one platform, right? You can make dials, you can send emails, you can see account history, all within Outreach, and it bidirectionally syncs with all these other complicated small little tools everywhere else, right? So Outreach really simplifies this tech landscape. And like I mentioned in the past, our real bread and butter is what's called a sequence, right? A series of sales touch points separated over time. You can almost think of it as persistent communication, right? If you're not familiar with the B2B world, it's very, very difficult to get a hold of prospects, right? You can dial a prospect every single day for a year, but if you're not that persistent, you're not going to get a hold of them, right? Most sales reps, regardless of whatever industry they're in, they give up after the third touch point, right? And that's where Outreach Sequences comes in, right? You can build out a 30-day sequence or cadence, a LinkedIn task, a phone call, emails, email follow-ups, text message even, right? That allows you to be persistent at scale. So you can reach out to more prospects in a more meaningful and a more persistent way. All right, awesome. I'm going to pass it over to Nikki and Sarah, who will be going over the rest of the slide deck. Nikki?
So what an SDR is, essentially what Ken just talked about. I'm essentially the person that is doing all of that outreach. So making those calls, writing those emails, reaching out on LinkedIn, but just a little bit of background on me as well. So I previously mentioned I graduated from WSU back in 2020. So there was no walking for me. I'm not sure how close any of you guys are to graduation, but yeah, super exciting. And then I actually went ahead and majored. I was a comm major specifically for public relations. And then I minored in human development. So my career path wasn't even sales focused, especially not even tech, because I really was looking to do something more in the communications realm, or even do more child development things. That was more of my arena, but kind of upon graduation and taking some small sales jobs just because it sounded interesting, I kind of like looked introspectively and realized that this was definitely something that I would want to do for a long period of time. I think it's just kind of was focusing on the things that I actually think that I'm good at, which is communicating with people, building those relationships, and also the things that I like, which I like winning. So I like winning people over and getting those meetings. So those kind of things really just led me to outreach. And one of the actually really fun things is I was introduced to the company through a friend that I had met at Wazoo. So he had worked there, and I found him on LinkedIn, and we kind of connected, and that's how I got started. So utilize your connections. Cougs help Cougs. And so, yeah, started, it's about my 3rd month now, and it feels like I've been here for years. It's just been a super incredible learning experience. Learning a lot about the business development skills that are just going to be necessary for me to be successful in any career in my future, and the importance of building those relationships, and essentially just really how to be more confident. And I think it kind of transpires across like even into your personal relationships, like learning how to listen, I think is something that everyone needs to do. And definitely have gotten a lot better at that, asking the right questions and just communicating effectively with people around you. And I also learned a lot of new acronyms. I'm sure that you guys have already heard a bunch. So the SDR, that's me. That's probably the first acronym you guys are learning. Go ahead and switch it. Yeah, so essentially, like I said, we are technically a networking team. So doing all of that cold calling, which if you guys aren't familiar, it's like you don't know the people you're calling ahead of time. So you're really finding these people on LinkedIn, doing the research beforehand, and then trying to get them on the phone to have a valuable conversation to then set up a meeting. That is essentially what my day-to-day task is. And effective cold outbounding is not talking at or yelling at your prospects. So this is not Wolf of Wall Street. And we're not manipulating people into meetings either. We're there to provide value, not create problems for them. And once again, not really pushing people into meetings, because while it might be effective at the time, people probably won't show up. And that's also not our main goal. And so it is, however, a really effective way to book with meetings and connect with people. I think it's fantastic too that I have the unique experience of working on the platform that I'm promoting. So that kind of makes it a lot easier because I know how helpful it is and it's been successful. And so that just makes my job a lot easier. And it's actually the way that most of these business deals are starting nowadays. And it's also just overall a great life skill. You can move it. And also career paths from an SDR. That was one of the really big things that I was looking for as well. Because even though my passions may have lied within the human development realm, there's only so far you can go. And so I kind of was looking for more of a career progression. So another reason why I kind of moved into this role. So from sales, you can go into an account executive position that's more of like a closer, client success managers. And then I'm actually looking to move into like a leadership management role, because even during my time right here, I've had a lot of, I have had a great time making connections with other team members and helping them in any way that I can. So kind of just like still looking introspectively at the options that I have. So, you know, hopefully I'll be moving into leadership management. But of course, you can always go the project manager's route or even just training consultant or sales enablement. Just kind of based off of what you really have a preference, but yeah. And then passing it over to Sarah.
Okay, thanks, Nikki. So now I'm going to transition into talking about navigating the remote job search. So a little bit about my experience. I also graduated in the spring of 2020, graduated from UW. And at the time, I really had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And it was a very scary time to be applying for jobs because it was like the start of the pandemic. So, you know, kind of going into college, I never really thought sales was going to be for me. I'm a pretty like introverted person. And I kind of had that idea of like, you know, like the pushy car salesman. And I was like, I do not want to do that. But through my time at UW, I ended up actually doing a sales program and having an internship at King 5, which is like a media agency. And, through that internship, I kind of learned how sales was really about kind of creating those relationships with the people you're going after. And also that there's a lot of creativity involved in it. Outbound prospecting, you really get to try and research what's going on with that company, what they care about, and try different methods of engagement in order to get their attention, which I think is super cool. And I love like being creative. So that was like really kind of my strength. So in terms of, finding outreach, given that it was the start of like everything shutting down, the main jobs that we're hiring were for sales. So I started, searching on LinkedIn, looking at tech company, looking in Seattle, and I came across like an old friend who I saw worked at Outreach, had a phone call with her, thought it sounded like a really cool company to work for, and I applied. And then I ended up getting the job and starting in July of 2020. So, through my time here, I've had a really, really fast pathway to promotion. I started out as an Agoji SDR, so just working the US SMB segment. Then I transitioned to work on the new markets team, specifically into Australia. And now I am a team lead here. So I'm managing, the newer salespeople within about 9 months of working here. My first job out of college, which I think is a pretty unique experience. But even given that, I had a really, really big like learning curve starting out, like graduating and then like having it be my first job and, never having experience in sales or in tech. It was super overwhelming to start, and especially not being in the office and not having that like face-to-face communication that you normally get when starting a job, right? So a couple ways I really overcame this. One is I always reached out for help. When you're working like mainly over Zoom, you're in a remote environment, like your managers, the people who are there to support you, they're not going to be able to see, if you're really struggling a lot of the times or specifically where, because they're just not there with you, right? So it's really, really important if you do start a remote job that you always reach out and ask for help and like specifically identify where you're struggling, because that's really what's going to get you off to a great start. The second thing is to utilize the resources around you. So when I started as an SDR, I was constantly like studying all the material I had, utilizing our entire tech stack, as well as reaching out to a ton of people to try and schedule time to learn from them. So reaching out to more senior people in the role, reaching out to my manager, like utilizing every possible angle that is provided. And the last thing is like practice. I think like having like the extra kind of like added difficulty of being remote, you're going to need to work a little harder to get where you want to be, right? So just like I practiced my cold calls every day, practice emails, was always like studying the material. And I think like doing those 3 things right off the bat really helped me like stand out and really improve right from the start. So just a couple of tips for navigating the remote job search. So I would say the number one thing that's going to be most important when searching for a job is utilizing your connections. So LinkedIn is going to be your best friend for navigating a job search, especially if you're trying to get into tech and tech sales. So make sure when you are looking at companies, identify if you know anyone that works at the company. Do you know anyone who knows someone who works at the company? Are there any like fellow school alumni that work at that company? And if you have any of those connections, like make sure to send a LinkedIn connection request if you're not already connected on the platform. Message them, ask to do a coffee chat, and see if you can connect and talk with them. What this is going to do is it's going to give you relevant information about the company and the role. It's going to show you kind of the upsides and downsides of working at that particular place. It's really going to give you information that will give you a competitive edge when applying to this role. And ultimately, most times it will end in a referral. So, like if you reach out to someone, they could submit something internally through their company, which would most of the time either at least put your name out there and that someone is there to vouch for you, but more likely than not kind of get you one step further in the application process and help you stand out amongst all of the competition that's applying. The other thing I do want to stress is people are busy and follow-up is key. So like as a team lead here, I get a ton of connection requests. I almost always accept them and I get a ton of messages. But the people who stand out to me and who I'll eventually like message back are the people who are consistent. Like they'll often message me like 3 or 4 times like before I get them a response, because like that's just how sales is, right? You got to do follow-up. That's what outreach is for. So like don't be afraid. You don't want to be like too aggressive, but don't be afraid to check back in, to follow up after a conversation and make sure that like you're top of mind. Because if you are reaching out to someone who's like a manager, they're likely going to get like a ton of requests like that. The second thing is do your preparation. So like make sure when you're applying, when you're interviewing, research the company, make sure to match your resume to anything relevant in the job description, and make sure to practice common interview questions, prepare questions at the end. Just make sure you come in prepared, because that's gonna like be set yourself up for like a better interview and better interaction. And lastly, like you're gonna face rejection, so do not take it personally. You're probably gonna apply for hundreds of jobs before you get one, right? So instead of like everyone goes through this experience, it sucks, but like just understand that like it's not you. And like when you do get a rejection, always ask for feedback and like learn from it so you can improve for your next interview. And so this is just an example of kind of how I got the job at Outreach. So first I had a chat with a connection, like a college connection, and she gave me a referral. And she also told me to reach out to a sales manager whose name is Brooke Bachesta. So I connected with Brooke completely cold, sent her this message. She was super nice. And after the first try, like sent me her calendar invite so I could chat with her. Scheduled some time, connect, came prepared, asked questions. And then I followed up with her after, and I thanked her for taking the time to speak with me. So this is always like a really good practice and just an example of how you can leverage connections and leverage LinkedIn to really make like put a face to the name and keep you top of mind. Okay, landing the interview. So, you know, in order to get that interview, it's important that you make your goals known. So like I said before, make sure to update your LinkedIn, freshen up your resume, get feedback on it. I'm sure that your college has like a resume career center. Utilize that while you still have it. And always like match your resume to the job description. Yeah, reach out to hiring managers at companies like I did with Brooke. Reach out to reps to ask about their current role. Utilize networking and only apply to one position per company, just to show that you know like what your specific goals and wants are, and that you have like a strategy and reason for applying.
All right. And
Okay.
so I'm going to go ahead and talk about what to look for in a company, because unlike Sarah, I was not smart and just jumped right into Outreach. I worked for a couple of different companies that, you know, didn't work out. But for training and resources, this is actually something that I think is incredibly important, because it's not impossible to be successful without proper training, but it is going to make things a lot harder. And so it's important that you work for a company that you know is going to spend the time to make you successful and genuinely cares about their employees' success. Like you don't want to look, see if people are like turning over quite often, those kind of things. Here are some examples of questions that you can ask. Just kind of like I would use these during the interview process, but you can also, you know, always utilize those connections as well and kind of ask more internal questions. And then more about the leadership and company growth. So I think this is also super important because there are a lot of companies, like we said, we're kind of like on the back end of like a startup, but we're growing like crazy. And so the opportunity is just, it's just incredible. And so that was something that I really started to pay attention to once working for some companies who maybe weren't doing the best and kind of going through such a difficult time, especially due to COVID. And so that was something that I hadn't paid attention to prior, but I think is really, really important. And so again, here's some just examples of the questions. So like, how successful has their leadership been? How long has the leadership stayed there? And then also LinkedIn is a huge place to find kind of content on what they're focused on and to see if like they're hiring more and more, and those kind of interactions as well. And then, yep, professional development and upward mobility. So once again, that was something that I specifically really was looking for because I am always looking to continue to grow. I want to be better than I was the week before. And that kind of comes to like career progression as well. That's what kind of moved me into this role. So it's always something to know when joining a company, like what are the possibilities past this point, what roles they typically are moving into, the kind of timeline that comes with that to see if it's something that you're really looking for, something that's consistent with what your personal and professional goals are.
Okay. And sorry, Kenner. Okay, I'll just do it. If you are interested in a career at Outreach, here's what you can do. First off, our application can be found online. Just go to the Outreach website, find sales positions. It's the sales development representative role. That's the one you're gonna want to apply for. But most importantly, utilize LinkedIn and network. Please reach out to us. Our emails are all up here for you to send us a message. Also, we are all on LinkedIn, so please look us up, add us on LinkedIn, and send us a message to chat with us. It's a super great opportunity to be an SDR here. We're hiring a ton, actively looking for upcoming hiring classes. So please reach out if you have any questions.
All right, awesome. Do we have any questions for us, y'all?
Yeah, Christopher, what do you got?
I think I came in a little bit late. I was just wondering if you guys might be able to do a little overview of whatever you went over at the very beginning.
Definitely, yeah. So beginning, I just talked a little bit about like what Outreach is. So we're a sales software for salespeople, right? Late stage startup. We're worth 4.4 billion. We raised 200 million a couple of weeks ago, actually, based in Seattle, right in Elliott Bay. Actively growing our sales team, our product team. We're going to end this year at about 1,000 employees.
Thank you.
Is there many opportunities for summer internships? If we're thinking about a future career here, could we get that internship, just kind of show us kind of hands on hand what the company's about and what we can expect for a future career for like upcoming classes, because I don't graduate till like 2023. So would there be an opportunity for me to kind of see what the company would provide like next summer, so I could be just kind of that much more prepared for future career?
Yes. So obviously you missed like this year's summer intern class, but for next year, I believe like we do interviews and hiring around April. But we do every summer. We usually have a cohort of anywhere from 5 to 10 summer interns, specifically SDR interns, right? We'll hand you like a book of business, usually 100, 150 unqualified accounts, and you'll actually go through the motions an SDR does, right? So it's going to be a really hands-on, proactive internship. We don't expect you to get coffee for anyone or anything like that, right? But it's a lot of fun. You learn a lot of like relatable skills, how to utilize a product. We essentially treat you like a new hire for your 10-week program. Great question, Laura.
Yeah, and then you also get Sarah as a manager, and she is awesome. That's great. And then Sharon, so I wanted to answer your question just because I was a recent grad, which was you. So yeah, I actually do feel like college prepared me for a lot of what I'm doing right now. I actually specifically took a course called Launchpad. I'm not sure if it's in the Carson, it's in the School of Business, but what it was just it was like a 1 credit semester long thing where they kind of talked to you about like resume building, interviewing, all those different things. Because I was just utilizing my resources within the Murrow College. But also, I think a lot of the things that we do when it comes to like writing or just even having those conversations with like professors, sending those emails, all of that kind of just like builds up to what we're doing here. And also, I think the biggest thing that we all learn at school is how to learn and how to be open to new information. And that is 100% applicable to this role.
Okay, I can take the next question. Why did you choose sales over another customer facing role? I mean, I think like the great thing about sales, and especially an entry level sales position, is like the skills that you learn will set you up for success in any role that you take on afterwards. Like Nikki said in the presentation, we have people who go into leadership, into account executive roles, into marketing, into CSM roles. So it really just like opens up the door for you for anywhere you want to go after because of like the communication skills and like research skills that you learn. So I would say like that's number one. Like the SDR position really taught me how to do like research in like a really great way and like form what I learned into like writing skills with outbound emails, as well as like summarize that information to do an outbound call. I learned how to build rapport. I learned how like an overall business and sales organization worked, which is like all really, really great information. The second thing is like the the promotion opportunities, like I touched on before. And then lastly, like sales is a super, super lucrative career, right? So you can utilize these skills in like any other type of career, but you have the potential to make a really, really good living from sales, like right out of college, which I think is really, really unique compared to a lot of other roles that you'll come across. So I'd say the combination of those three things is really why I chose sales over a different customer facing role.
And I'm gonna chime in there as well too. I chose sales. I kind of had a roundabout way ending up in at outreach, but really simply, I'm sure a lot of you can relate with this. I had a ton of student loans, right? I was finishing up school. I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to law school. I got to save up more money for that. Jesus Christ, right? And all my buddies were getting jobs in tech, right? And I had never heard of what SDR does, but I was like, I figured I could do that for a year, save up some money, pay off some student loans, right? I did it for 6 months. I made more money in 6 months than I would have thought possible, right? I think it's really important to stress that sales is a very tough role and SDR is a really tough role, right? But we have reps on our team who are clearing, like our top producer last year made around $150,000, right? Fresh out of college, no sales experience, knocked it out of the park. Our top performers on average are earning just a shade under 100K a year, right? Sales is really tough, but it does reward those who hustle, and there's unlimited career commission potential, right? And this is just as an SDR. As you go on to an AE road or CSM road, the potential for earning like hundreds of thousands of dollars in commission are very highly possible. And I know myself, quite candidly speaking, I'm very, money motivated. I've got bills to pay. I've got, other things to do. And that financial freedom you get in sales as an SDR and outreach is second to none, in my opinion. Any other questions, y'all? Don't be shy.
I don't know if you guys saw this one on the chat, but it just says, do you know if next year's summer internship will be remote or in office?
That's a great question. So we don't know yet. I will tell you though, for this year, our entire team's remote, right? We do have plans, knock on wood, to go remote, right? We've done this job remote. We have the option for team members to come into the office if they want. Obviously, there's some precautions around that, but a lot of our team has done the job really well remote. Like Nikki, for example, she's going to have a record-breaking month this month, and I think you're in Redmond, right? This month.
Yeah, I made enough money to move out of my parents' house, so
Love it. But yeah, we'll have different options available, right? The office will always be open, but I think a lot of SDRs, a lot of people finishing out of school, they want that flexibility to either work in the office or work from wherever they want.
I just wanted to double tap on something that I believe Nikki and Sarah went over. I used to be a logistical supply sergeant in the Army for 9 years, started out at Fort Lewis, and I could definitely say that, what they were saying about networking, constantly asking questions. If you don't know what you're doing, try to find someone who does, and they can usually, refer you to another person, just a constant flowing chain in order for you to be able to not only gain knowledge in your field if you are just starting out. Definitely do not be afraid of asking questions, write them down and go to somebody. And even if they don't know, they know somebody who might know, and then constantly keep asking questions and trying to get as much information. And even when it comes to maybe you have to fill out certain documentation you've never done before, or that documentation can be filled out for multiple different tasks, try to find someone who might have copies, what we call like a continuity book almost, of getting documentation. How would you fill it out for this task? How would you fill it out for this task? And get copies of that so you can get examples on how to do your job better and fill out the paperwork properly for whatever task you're doing for. So I just wanted to add on to that from what I learned.
Yeah, totally. And that kind of actually just gave me an idea too, because Griffin just asked, what's your favorite part about working at Outreach? And I think my favorite part about it is really the people, because everyone, most of the people who had started here has started as an SDR. So there was always millions of people that you can ask. And just, I think that it is super important, especially while being remote, that we kind of have that community sense and where we can ask questions to everybody and have the camaraderie. And so I definitely think that's my favorite part about Outreach so far. But Ken already touched on it too. The paycheck's awesome, which is a bonus. But yeah, just like great environment. You definitely want to pick a company that you want to work for long term. And so I was happy to, find this one. Amy, that is actually a fantastic question. Sarah kind of brought up Brooke earlier. We're really working on improving diversity, inclusion, and everything. It's actually something that I've attended. It's called Gals and Sals. So it's an event for all of the female, salespeople to kind of get together, and it's kind of a community thing in that, which was super awesome. It was really nice to meet everybody, and so there's definitely a lot of like support groups in this organization, and a lot of what's it called, like missions that we're trying to put together to get more women obviously involved. But I'm sure like Ken and Sarah can touch on that a little bit more.
Definitely. So a couple of things on that. So that's one of our core values, right? And I know a lot of tech companies have core values like honesty, trust, and whatnot. But I think it's important to note a couple of things. Like our CEO happens to be a person of color. He's a first generation immigrant from Venezuela. And diversity, we find strength in diversity and inclusion. That's one of our core pillars, right? Things we're doing on the SDR department side. I've actually reached out to HBCUs. We've established partnerships with Howard University, right? We're sponsoring their business school, some of their business classes. We're going to be flying out to Atlanta in the fall, hopefully when things settle down, to speak at some of the events there. Gals and Sals, that's a great event or a program that Nikki brought up. That's led by our CRO, Anna Baird, who happens to be a female tech professional in a C-level suite. We also have a ton of ERGs, so employee resource groups, affinity groups for different folks. I lead our AAPI group. We have one for the LGBTQ community and other communities as well too. So it's really important for us, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sarah, do you have anything else to add there?
Yeah, I think you guys both summed it up pretty well. But I just do want to add, like, even since when I started, like the efforts and kind of communities that are being created to promote like DEI efforts. I've already seen like so much change and improvement in that regard. Like for example, I know when I started out, there were like a lot less, like, from like a female perspective, there are a lot less than there are now. And now like Nikki's team is literally all female SDRs, which I think is a pretty cool thing to see in a span of like 8 or 9 months.
Bye, Roy. That's a great question. Transferable skills. I think we kind of already touched on like building relationships. I know that is definitely going to be super important, you know, moving into if we ever decide to like move to different roles. But are you talking about transferable skills like from what we've learned or from?
Like, so coming in with like your knowledge based from graduating and, you know, like your work experience before out, you know, like, what are some of the qualities that, you know, that would apply to this role, of course, that you would grow on and build with once you are part of the company, but just kind of what are some of the skills that you came with that naturally connect with sales?
Okay, yeah, totally. Yeah, I know, because it's kind of interesting because I wasn't even in the, you know, right school, I guess you could say. But I definitely think that written communication that I learned through COM and just overall like written communication kind of goes into like phone calls and writing those emails and everything that really, really did help. Also, I think the information that I learned about human beings and how to connect with them through human development is also something that I found super valuable, not only in my professional, but also personal life. And those are obviously being developed as I continue to build relationships with new and different kinds of people through all of this outreaching. But I think really it's just about like knowing how to like work hard and knowing like wanting to learn, wanting to continue education even after graduating. I think are two of probably the most important things that you'll need in order to be, you know, successful salesperson. I can keep talking. Yeah, fantastic question.
I can take this one. So for outreach, it's kind of a multi-step process. So you start by just applying on our website. Then immediately after, you are sent a sales assessment. So essentially, you just like take a like I think it's like a 45-minute like quiz with a number of like questions on how you would approach situations, just to determine if you would be like a good fit to go on with next steps. So after that, if you pass the assessment, then you do a phone screen with either one of the team leads. So like it would be myself or a recruiter. So our recruiter is Mandy. She's great. So she also does the phone screens. And then from there, the last step of the interview process is a panel interview. So it would be like 30 minutes with 3 different people, usually a manager, an SDR, or like 2 managers and SDR, and there would be 2 practical application pieces. So we would give you the script ahead of time, we would do a mock cold call, and then also do a mock email. So that's kind of the steps of the outreach application process. It's pretty lengthy, but we just do that to ensure that it's 100% going to be a good fit on both ends.
I could talk about biggest challenge. So I guess there was a lot of challenges, definitely. But I think the biggest challenge was kind of like learning about tech I mean, obviously, you know, you don't have to have any prior knowledge before entering into this position. It is just a lot of information. So that was kind of the biggest thing. And then also like using the skills like I learned, like the written communication, but on a professional sense. So a lot of like the verbiage will change and the steps that you know take to properly create those relationships. That was probably one of the biggest things, but I've had really good teachers. So shout out to Sarah.
Any more questions? Going once, okay. Well, I want to say thank you to Ken and Sarah and Nikki for sharing their insights with us. It was just great to have you join us. And as a reminder, we ask attendees to please complete the survey that's going to be in the chat before you log off. Let me just share the screen with you guys. So that's going to be dropped in the chat. We have a few announcements just moving ahead for the career series. Tomorrow, we're having Dell stop by and they're doing a webinar on business connections in tech industry. On Wednesday, BP is stopping by to do a webinar, Landing an Internship, Steps to Success. That came by quickly. And Slalom is doing a webinar on how to maximize your informational interview. Also, look on Handshake for upcoming career events. The Carson Internship Fair is coming up and Career Networking Night is open to students. Last but not least, and I remember, I think it was Sarah that mentioned this, if you need help with your job search or interview prep, this is how you would do it. You would just actually go onto Handshake and you can set up an appointment with a career specialist. So those should be jumping into the chat. Again, thank you to our wonderful guest. We appreciate everyone's participation in the Carson Career Summer Series, and we'll see you at the next event. Go Cougs!
Go Cougs, thanks guys.